Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. We have two guests today. We have Symone Colquitt. She's a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist and you guys work for the city of Bowie. Our second guest is Katrinic. And she's also a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist. And today we're talking about kids and anxiety, among other things. So let's start off with talking about the fact that you guys have been doing this for quite some time. How have you seen therapy with children change over the last, you guys said 18 years, that I hope you don't mind, because you started at age 10. So exactly. It doesn't, but anyway, how do you think things have changed? Is there a better understanding of anxiety now than in the past?
Yes, absolutely. I think that a great deal of the stigma around treating mental illness has shifted over the years. It used to be people felt very, afraid to talk about their emotions. And we live in a world where emotions aren't very readily discussed. So I think even today we're learning more about that. The stigma is removed. People feel a lot freer to talk about it in a show like yours. And we're so grateful, Stephanie, that you'd invite us to come in and to talk about that. That helps to reduce the stigma so that people can get help when they're hurting, when they're feeling difficulties, and needing help. So in the neurological field, they've learned a whole lot more about the brain and how it functions, and how our emotions are impacted, how genes, and just more and more research has been done that connects all that together for us.
Karen,
so
how do you think things
helpful.
have changed?
Well, I totally agree with Symone about the research with the brain and how we can help children faster, and how maybe 25 years ago we wouldn't know it was anxiety. Maybe sometimes a parent might think their child was not being good, or they were bad, and now we realize there's something going on where the child's really needing some support so they can grow into who they're meant to be. And we're grateful for all the research that's been done and how we've been able to apply it with families to help children sooner. Anxiety can take many different flavors. It's very unique to each person, and there's different kinds. But we can go through a protocol of an assessment where we can figure out what's driving the train, so to speak. And underneath, for example, most anxieties is a core fear of some kind. And once we can help a family and a child kind of identify that, there's lots of expressive techniques or experiential things like art, or we have a sand tray. We do breathing, we do exercises for the child to have like a little toolkit to help themselves.
Well, what types of anxiety are there? What do you see in your daily practice? What different types of anxiety do you run across?
Oh my goodness.
So anxiety can range from, first of all, there can be moderate, severe, or just very mild anxiety. It could be separation anxiety, which is very normal. Kids very often, when they're toddlers, are afraid of being separated from their parents, although they might be very safe, right? Then there could be, but if they get older and they're still suffering from that type of anxiety, we'd be concerned. So we think about what age and stage they're in, right, to determine whether or not the anxiety is getting in the way for them.
If a child is suffering from some sort of anxiety at 2 or 3 years old, as we see, we've got situations now down at the border. Is it a type of thing that can last a lifetime, or once they get older, once they get about 6, do they grow out of it?
So that's a good question. So is the anxiety a traumatic event, like something like being separated from your parent, which might move into a type of anxiety called post-traumatic stress syndrome? So that's a more severe type of anxiety. But there may be something like just general anxiety, or anxiety that involves phobias. I'm afraid of spiders, anxiety. So anxiety can take so many different forms. There's social anxiety. I'm afraid of being on a TV show and talking to somebody, or doing a speech, a public speech. So,
or going to a birthday party.
Or going to a birthday party, or making new friends. So anxiety can present in so many different ways.
Does it manifest, especially when we're talking about younger children,
Yes.
with them regressing?
Well, we want to go back to the idea that I just kind of want to remind us that anxiety is normal, and we all have to have it in order to be on the planet. So it's not a pathology to be anxious. It's when it gets in the way of your daily functioning, and it gets in the way of you interacting in the world the way you want. So the other piece that I kind of wanted to make a note of is, for example, the children. They can get better, and they don't have to have anxiety the rest of their lives, because the brain has this way of being called neuroplasticity, which means the brain can change. So the child can get traumatized and have anxiety for a year or two, but if they do a treatment, many different ways you can treat it, you can change your brain so that that child's not walking around with it for 40 years. I just kind of wanted to finish that thought.
So the earlier you intervene and the more often you intervene, the better the outcomes.
What should parents look for when it comes to anxiety? How do you know as a parent, oh, it's going to get through it in a week or so, or that we've got an issue that we may need to seek some therapy for?
You want to look for, is it happening in more than one place? You know, is this something that's just happening at nighttime before bed, and it so happens that we just moved to a new location, right? Or is it something that's persisted over time? You know, how persistent is it? How severe does it seem to be? Is it getting in the way of school functioning, relationships? So those kind of things are alerts for parents. Is your child having nightmares, wetting the bed, acting out in ways where sometimes anxiety will show up in very aggressive ways. A child might be more behaviorally aggressive. Other times they might withdraw a little bit more. So,
And they might become behaviorally aggressive when they have to go somewhere. So instead of having to go to the youth group, for example, they might have a huge tantrum because they're so nervous to go, but they create something else like a diversion, and the parent might not realize it's because of the anxiety that they're doing that.
yeah.
How important is it to talk to the parents, to treat the parents as well as the child?
We think it's essential
It's
because we
like,
work with the whole family.
It's what we live by.
Yeah, the same tools that we're teaching kids, everybody can benefit from.
Well, if we just talk, if we just work with the child and send, it's like a little, the mobile in the baby's crib, and if you touch one, they all move. If we just work with the child and sent them back in, it wouldn't change it because the whole system needs to kind of support the child. Plus, usually it's like a synergy. Families are so connected, and it's a passion that we have. Obviously, Bowie Youth and Family Services, it's what we do, and we truly believe that we can't really help families make the changes they want within even one of them if we don't work with everybody.
Do you find that that anxiety is hereditary?
Sometimes.
Yeah, so there seems to be a hereditary component from what I understand, but it's not always the case. But we do know that if a child or a person comes into treatment, their attitude about coming into the treatment impacts how the treatment is going to, the outcome of the treatment. So if you come in expecting a good outcome, and if parents have the buy-in, it's easy to get the kids to have the buy-in as well. And then the outcome is going to typically be a lot better. So there seems to be sometimes, I think there's a whole line of research about the gene component and how it's correlated. But there can be so many complex issues that go into the lives of children these days.
And
So,
what you're saying, the lives of children these days, things are so different from when we were growing up. The kids are dealing with so many more issues that can cause anxiety. For example, school shootings.
yeah.
We didn't have to fear school shootings as
Yes,
children.
exactly.
How do you make kids feel safe in their environment?
Wow, that's a tough question. And I think as soon as you get that answer, you have a Nobel Prize waiting for you. But it's, you know, how do we do that? You know, I think it's important to do some of the basics. For instance, I think kids need to get a lot more rest than they get. Kids nowadays are very hurried and rushed and involved in so many things. It takes a long time to get from one place to the other. So we find very often, you know, children aren't getting enough sleep, or they're getting interrupted rest, you know, with all their cell phones and, you know, and things like that. So it's important to get a good sleep. It's important also to make sure they've eaten well and eaten in a healthy way. Those fundamentals, exercise is vital.
Because we don't do this, they don't do the same exercises we did. We would go outside. Now they go on YouTube.
Right, or they're doing more sedentary play.
Yes.
And they're not involved in the interactions where they're looking eye to eye to people. And all that kind of stuff makes a difference fundamentally. So I think that's a really good start. To make sure that we're doing that, not only making the kids do it, but as a family unit, getting out and getting involved. And traditions, I think, help. Mm-hmm. The traditions that families typically had, where they're celebrating for the 4th of July or getting together on a regular basis, those kind of things are cement that just really bring things together for families and help to create coherency and consistency.
You're also dealing with things, for example, nowadays you've got kids with ADHD, you've got kids with autism, you've got kids with Asperger's. How do you kind of blend that? Because you might have the anxiety on top of all of those other issues.
Exactly.
Well, actually, that would make sense. For a child to be anxious that was Asperger's, for example, because they're going out into the world and the world's not a safe place for them because it's not working for them and people don't get them. So then they develop anxiety, and then the anxiety could take a life of its own on. So it would very much be correlated. We would just support the child in terms of what you said before, though, about how do you let them know the world's a safe place? I guess you can't really totally tell them the world's a safe place, but when they're younger, with what Symone said about the screen time and all of the electronics, it might be useful to keep in mind how old a child is to limit maybe their exposure to a shooting. You might not want to keep it on for 6 hours. You might want to, you can't totally protect them, but you don't also have to, like, yeah, because that's a piece. A little thing we do, this is silly, but we do this little, we talk about the body a lot in therapy because it's not just in your head, it's in your body and your emotions. You can feel sometimes you might have a stomach ache so we would work with the child in terms of they might be afraid of something or they saw something terrible and they're worried and they can't sleep at night and they want every light on and they want to sleep in their parents' bed. So we would teach them little tricks, and one of them would be just to sit, like if you wake up in the middle of the night, you're going to do some deep breathing, and you're going to say, the grown-ups will keep me safe. The grown-ups will keep me safe. That's just an example of what you could do with a child. And if they do that all the time, it's like a muscle, and it will help. It will go in their brain, and it will help. And then the mom and dad will, hey, mom, I did my thing last night. All right, good for you. These are just like we do with grown-ups, positive self-talk. And encouragement and affirmation.
If you've got a 14-year-old who's dealing with certain issues, I remember when 9/11 happened and they were playing it over and over and over again. That 14-year-old is going to cope with it differently than the 6-year-old.
The 14-year-old is old enough to understand even what happens inside their brain. And when you explain, and like we even show pictures of the brain and we talk about what part, and let them to know that they have their own power inside them. I always say it's like the red shoes in Wizard of Oz. They have the tools, and we can, and then when they realize, oh my goodness, I can do this, this, and this, and I might feel better, they actually take ownership sometimes, and that's what we would want for them because they are old enough to help heal themselves, because the power is always coming from within. In the bottom line, they do have the power, I believe.
What initiatives are you guys working on currently when it comes to kids and stress?
Well, we have, first and foremost, family therapy. We do that in our agency, and all people have to do is give us a call. If they call our office, we do an intake, and we're able to see families here that live in Bowie or out in Prince George's County. So we are able to see them at really reasonable rates. And so that's one of the first things. We also have groups that we offer. Groups for anxiety, ADHD. We have a girls count group, a parenting group.
What's the benefit of being with a group of like-minded folk?
Well, when the children are together in a room and they might be talking about a different topic that's related to anxiety each week, and they share with one another, excuse me, that's really healing to know, oh, it's not just me. She has it too, and there's a power in that. And it gives you more hope, and it makes you feel like, oh, this can be better. And then after 6, 7, 8 weeks, you have all those experiences. It's an empowering, fortifying event. So we're very excited that we have one of our clinicians does an anxiety group for children that's very popular, and it's like whoever signs up first is going to get the spot. And whenever we have enough children or teenagers to work with, we will start a group based on what we have. That's like, if people all called and said we want this kind of group, we would make that group. Or if we all have a client that has that profile, hey, let's make a group for that group. So it's very fluid.
We talked off air about a movie that you guys may be working with. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that?
Well, there's a movie called Angst, A-N-G-S-T.
Yep, Angst the movie.
And it's angst.com, and it's it's a movie that came out of California that's going across the country, and I believe it was originally made to show in schools. And it's to help children, teachers, principals, school nurses understand what's going on with children who have anxiety. And we learned about it, and we previewed it, and our director, Wendy Wilcox, is arranging to have us be able to have a showing here in Bowie, because you can't just go see this movie. It's
really excellent. So it's going to probably air sometime in the fall or spring. So we hope to help to expand the knowledge about mental illness, specifically
what's good about
anxiety. It helps to reduce the stigma thing. You know, when people know that it's okay. They show Michael Phelps, for instance. This is a guy who's won like 28 medals, but he very openly in the movie talks about living with anxiety, depression, ADHD, substance abuse, and one of the things he says, it's okay not to be okay. And what a powerful message from someone who's so well decorated. And the movie is more of that, you know. It's okay not to be okay, and what can we do? And so it's just a real nice opportunity to continue what we're doing here, having conversations about mental illness and how to make a difference.
I agree, and I think I guess the biggest thing for the movie for me was there's hope, and you can fix this.
Absolutely.
And they tell you how, and
yes.
It's probably every age child, every color and gender, and everybody's story. Then there's doctors and therapists talking about what's going on in the anxiety and how your brain can change. And I think that's it right there. You don't have to live like this. When you were born, you were not meant to have a life where you couldn't, where it was crippling and you couldn't access your environment. And nobody should suffer in this day and age.
This is treatable.
It's truly inspiring. You could go now, go on the website angst.com and click showings near me, and it might be like Virginia, but there's somewhere. Like, I actually liked it so much I went to Virginia the next week and saw it again. That's how much I liked it.
Now, when you're working with patients and you talk about treatments and getting better, are we talking about mainly therapy? Are we talking about a combination of therapy and medication, or is it just individual? It depends on who you're dealing with, the family you're dealing with, the child you're dealing with.
Yeah, it definitely varies. We often partner, though. We want to partner with other mental health providers, like psychiatrists very often, the schools, that's an important component, as well as the parents and the community. So sometimes it does mean medication, when the symptoms are more persistent and troubling.
But we don't prescribe medication.
No.
We would offer a family to go get seen
that type of evaluation
to see if that's also needed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see sometimes substance abuse? As we know, in the state of Maryland, it is a huge problem. How have you all had to deal with that?
Well, usually there are some initiatives as well with the school that we partner with called Safe and Drug-Free Schools. So very often we get referrals from the schools for kids who are beginning
To be at risk.
To be at risk for substance abuse misuse. So we do assessments early on in the school system to try to figure out, you know, what might be going on and try to help them get on track early.
And if it's a bigger problem, then we would refer them to a treatment center or places where they could go for their child to get treatment. So that's a common thing that we do because we're partnered ongoing with safe and drug-free schools. But then we also have in our caseload, we each have so many families we see a week, and sometimes they might be a child or a teenager who has a substance abuse issue, and they also might be in treatment while they're in family therapy here.
Or a parent.
Or a parent.
Yeah.
So they might be in a 12-step program. The child might be doing group therapy for substance abuse, plus they come with their family to us. And that's sometimes part of their treatment for the bigger picture. Yeah.
As we see, there are so many things impacting kids today: substance abuse, social media. You've got these different conditions, as we spoke about, the Asperger's and autism and ADHD. And what are and we talked about some of the coping mechanisms. What are some of the things that you teach regularly?
Well, I like to start with parents. And very often parents need to understand their own emotional states and becoming more and more aware of them and talking very openly about them. The more we can become more literate about our emotions, the better it is within a family system. So if a parent can say, I'm feeling a little cranky today, I need to take rest, that helps to be the dialogue. So the other thing for parents to empathize, I think that's so fundamental, the empathy that's expressed within a family.
And
that makes a
also
huge difference.
To know, all families are different.
Everybody's
a lot of
different.
kids are dealing with divorce.
Exactly.
A lot of kids are dealing with blended families. It's not like it was. Remember, Father Knows Best and the Brady Bunch. And
Yeah, exactly. Families come in so many different shapes and sizes, and we often see families that are coming when they're having transitions, whether it be transition to a new family kind of situation, they're moving from somewhere else. This has been the third school. They're moving from middle school to high school. Those transitional phases are oftentimes when families need support for the stress that they might be experiencing.
It was very interesting a few minutes ago. You were talking about how what's going on in your brain manifests in your body. I was one of those stomachache kids. And how things like a stomach ache can mean you're stressed, especially when you're talking about high school kids. For example, I have a set of twins and they're dealing with the SATs, AP courses. Where do I apply to college? And why shouldn't I be perfect all the time? You're not going to be perfect all the time. How do you cope with those and take those coping mechanisms into the future as you enter adulthood?
Well, one of them would be mindfulness, which I know you're familiar with in terms of just learning coping skills where instead of worrying out of control and your brain going in a circle about all the worries, to just sit and be and do the breathing. We might add a visualization where you're breathing in peace and breathing out worry or whatever. And then there's almost like a little strategy, like a little menu of, oh, these are all the things I can do to make myself feel better. I can listen to music, I can take a walk, I can call a friend, I can do my breathing, I
Is
can
it good
journal.
to list those things? To have a chart for example?
We actually will make little toolkits and kids can go in and pick one, or it's like we might see them one week and, well, what did you do to take care of yourself when that happened? And it's kind of an education in a way to know that you have these things that will work and we have to use them. And then let the parent be part of that culture. What could you do right now? Maybe you could draw a picture of how you feel. If you're very angry when you come back if you're going back and forth between the parents' houses, for example, that are divorcing, and you have a lot of feelings, why don't you draw a picture of how you feel? That would be a way of the child learning to cope with what's going on inside instead of just stuffing it down and getting a stomach ache. But again,
and then the parent can say, you know what, I'm feeling this way, or I notice the whole family seems a little bit on edge. What can we do? Let's turn on some music. Let's turn off the TVs. Let's, watch a funny movie. So it can be a more family-oriented thing. Because we almost mirror each other's emotions. So if one person in the house is anxious, it causes anxiety in other people in the home. So, you know, coming up with strategies as a group. You know, these are the things we do. Let's take a walk. You know, let's take something off our plate. It's too overwhelming.
And just the mere awareness that there is that body-mind connection is absolutely powerful. Knowing that if I'm stressed out about my chemistry test, that can manifest in other ways.
Yes, headaches. People get up very often. You know, muscle tension, inability to sleep, all those things, absolutely.
Now we're gonna give your information at the end of the program so that people can contact you. It's a program through the city of Bowie that is affordable. And like you said, you work with both the individual and the family because we really are one unit when it comes down to it. And you also offer group sessions as well. And especially, I love that idea of the girls.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have some groups in the schools as well. Did we mention the Dream It, Be It program that's offered through the Seroptimus Club of Bowie?
That we do with them at Bowie High School.
And what is that?
Dream It, Be It is sort of a girls empowerment type of group as well, and it's supported by mentors throughout the school. We do have a mentor program that we sponsor at Bowie High School. That's an excellent program where kids can get additional support. So if you have a child who's struggling with anxiety or other things, or you just want them to have positive role models, the mentor program is an excellent one. I think they're recruiting now even.
And at Samuel Ogle too, I think the mentoring program is.
Yes,
Middle
exactly.
school is so important
Vital.
to get those lessons.
Yes.
For all of my kids, that was the worst time, was that whole middle school. I guess they're walking hormones. I don't know what.
Well, we're very much hoping to become more active in middle schools, but this fall we're going to be at Tasker and Ogle and Bowie High doing a group about decision making and how to coping strategies and just becoming empowered, and that we've been doing it probably for maybe 6 years.
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah, I think so.
But it's the first year for Tasker coming up, but we're excited about that.
Yeah, so we love that, you know, we have partnerships with the school as well as the work we do clinically, and the opportunity to do shows like this too.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you've got a whole host of folks working with you guys.
We do.
To make these programs.
Team. Yeah, we're grateful to be able to do this work.
Very good, very good. So we have been talking to licensed clinical marriage and family therapist Symone Colquitt and Karen Katrinic. And we've been talking about anxiety in children. You guys put out some real good information today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to put your information in the credits, and hopefully people will be in touch to get the help they need.
Okay.
And the big thing is to know that there is help out there. You are not alone.
Right.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Have a great day.